person of interest, I am honored to have the company of an active, able, and formidable figure in Kenyan politics. I'm talking about this, the governor of the great county of Meru. I'm seated with him right here, Kiraitu Murungi. Thank you so much for making time, sir.
Thank you, Rogers.
Okay.
Karibu sana Meru.
Asante sana. It's a beautiful place. And perhaps it would be proper to start with your background. Growing up, where exactly did you grow up in the same area?
No. I grew up about 10 kilometers from here, next to Mount Kenya forest.
Yes.
That's where my parents live. So this is my home, but I also have another home next to my father's and mom's place.
As well.
Place called Kionyo.
Kionyo.
Yes.
Kionyo village, yes.
Kionyo village. So that's where I grew up and went to school there.
Speaking of school, you're quite well established in terms of academics. Perhaps take us through the brief history. Where did you start?
I went to two primary schools. I went to a local primary school called Kairiane Primary School.
Yes.
But those days it didn't have standard 5. So after standard 4, I went to standard 5 at Kionyo Primary School.
Okay.
And that's where I did my CPE then.
Yes.
And then from there I went to Chuka Boys.
To Chuka Boys.
High school.
Before we get to Chuka Boys, you've told an interesting story of how you almost dropped out of school.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, tell us about it.
That was interesting because the headmaster of the primary school where I went to school was the best man of my father.
During the wedding?
During the wedding.
Okay.
And the headmaster kept on calling parents. You know, those days his parents were building schools and there were many challenges. And my father was a busy man. So he used to send my mother, to go to school.
Yeah.
And then the headmaster felt that my father is the one who should come to school and not my mother. And so one time we went with my mother and we were sent back to bring my father. And my father said, this man, we sent him to be the boss of children. Now how can he even boss the parents?
Okay.
So my father said, you want to go?
Yes.
And then the master said, I will not go to school without my father.
Until your dad goes to the school?
Yes.
Okay.
And my dad said, you never go. So that's how I lost a whole time in standard 4. And
these two were friends, your dad and the headmaster?
Yeah, he was their best man. But somehow, because of manhood, I almost got lost in that game.
Yes.
Yeah, so actually I didn't finish standard 4. But my father was a friend of the neighboring, the headmaster of the neighboring primary school.
Oh, the school you now joined?
Yeah, so, and I was doing very well. I was number 1 in standard 4, standard 3.
Yeah.
So when they looked at my record, they took me to standard 5. Yes. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. So, so this whole your qualifications speak for themselves. So I'm pretty sure you're quite you give back to that particular headmaster who accommodated you in class 5.
Yes, we got on very well.
Yes,
he was my friend until he passed on.
Okay. May he rest in peace. So that's interesting. You mentioned you went over to Chuka.
Yes.
I also saw you were also in Alliance as well.
Yes, I did very well at Chuka High School. I was actually the top student there. Those days, Alliance High School used to pick top boys from across the district.
Yes.
So I was among those who were taken to Alliance High School from Meru. That's 1972. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. How was Alliance back then? Is it still the same in terms of principles, values?
I think the last Muzungu, the headmaster, A.C. Sanders, was then the principal at Alliance High School. And of course, Alliance was a big school for us. And for us coming from the village, we felt walking on top of the world, going to Alliance High School.
Quite empowered.
But I was easily deflated when we got there. because first I didn't know I speak English with like a Meru accent.
Okay.
So we go for a debate at Alliance Girls. And since I used to be the chairman of the debating club at Chuka High School, you know, I volunteered to go and speak there.
As well.
So those who had I stood, then a girl at the back said, "Sit down, you Meru." And she confused me.
Oh my.
And I never went for another debate there.
And that was the end of it. That must have been interesting. But I see that value of debate is still inculcated in you.
Yeah, but the Alliance was a good school.
Yes.
I think it exposed me to, you know, very good scholarship.
Okay.
And then we was a member again of debating club at Alliance Boys, the history club, the philosophical club.
Okay.
And people like J.M. Kariuki used to come and speak to us. Ngoyo Wadhiongo, you know, Professor Ndondas from University of Nairobi.
Okay.
So we were exposed. And I think it gave us the appetite, you know, for history and public affairs.
As well.
Yeah.
So is this where the dream to become a lawyer started? Would you say Alliance played a big part in this?
No, actually, you'll be surprised. I wanted to be either a literature teacher or a journalist. At the time I left Chuka High School.
Oh my.
But when I went to Alliance, we met boys from, you know, good backgrounds. You know, children of ministers, permanent secretaries. And nobody was talking about being a teacher in my class. And then Kenyatta University had just started. And we're calling it Harambe University.
Why is that?
And, you know, and it was only teaching education.
No, yeah.
So in my class, nobody chose to study education for fear of going to Kenyatta University.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how I chose to study law. Not because I knew anything about law, but because other boys were also choosing the law. It was supposed to be a good career.
Oh, that's interesting. And it goes to show, like, your company actually determines your path in life, one or the other.
Yeah, you're influenced by your peers.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think in my class, 12 of us became lawyers. Yeah.
That's interesting. Are you still in contact with some of the old boys from Alliance?
Oh, yes. And we talk with some of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really proper. So you moved over to University of Nairobi, pursued law.
Right.
That must have been the start of a very long journey in terms of academics.
No, it was very exciting to study law in the 1970s in the University of Nairobi. You remember that time, there was a lot of student activism.
Quite so.
And there was a wave of socialism, you know, sweeping through Africa. You know, with Mengistu in Ethiopia, Frelimo in Mozambique, you know, and Agostino Neto in Angola, and Nyerere in Tanzania. So the university community in Nairobi was very, very vibrant, and that people like Ngui Wadhiongo were there, or Code Bitek. So I think it was one of my most enjoyable places to be academically.
That's really proper. I'm sure it also played a part in honing your political skills, one or the other, because of the active student body.
Yeah, I think I was largely shaped by Professor Dr. Weir Mutunga. He was my lecturer.
He lectured you? Okay.
Yes. Weir Mutunga was a young lecturer. He had just come from University of Dar es Salaam.
Yeah.
And he exposed us to Marxism and socialism then. And he tried to give lower class analysis, saying, you know, there's a powerful weapon in the hands of the rich to beat down the poor and the exploited. And, you know, we are to be on the side of the people. So that's how we entered into law.
Okay.
And the idea then was to demystify law. And indeed, there's a lot of colonialism in our laws, that time.
True.
And you could clearly see that although we got independence, as far as the law was concerned, we can just continue with the colonialism.
Oh, yeah.
We had only changed the color.
Okay.
So we say there was much more continuity rather than change after independence. And then, of course, we were all fans of people like JM.
Yeah.
We talk about the Kenyans having 10 million beggars and 10 millionaires, that kind of thing.
Quite so.
Yeah, so the university community then, I think, was very politically conscious. Yeah.
Allow me to take you back just a little bit. How was it growing up in the colonial era and witnessing the repression of Mau Mau as well? How was it?
So my father was a Mau Mau. Indeed, I was born myself at the height of 1952 when the emergency was declared. So almost immediately after I was born, my father disappeared in the forests. And my father had served in the Second World War. So he was one of the few Mau Maus who could handle a weapon. And he had scars on battle. He had been shot through the leg, And so when he came back when I was almost going to Standard 1. So I'm grown in my mother, a lot of challenges in a detention camp. And a lot of poverty then. But we were there to witness the excitement of independence. In 1963.
Yeah.
As children, we were lined up and we were given sweets by Kanu youth wingers. These were Uhuru sweets. And then there were bonfires lit around the hills on the night of independence. A lot of singing and dancing.
Celebration.
Yeah, I think it was a great moment,
I can only imagine, because I wasn't there. You're definitely speaking for majority of people, yeah.
No, it was very exciting.
Okay.
It was a very exciting time.
Well, let's go forward now. You're done with UON. You also pursued your master's as well. But something that caught my eye when you went to Harvard, who was your classmate?
Okay, I know you want to talk about Obama.
Yeah. That stood out for me. Yeah.
No, we just met with Obama in class at Harvard. Because I'm done a master's degree on human rights at the University of Nairobi. So I decided to advance it, when I go to Harvard. So we're doing a class on human rights. There's an interesting course called Inventing Democracy and International Law. So we share those courses with, with Obama. Incidentally, I just come from Kenya.
Yeah.
I think it had been his first visit to Kogero to go and trace his roots.
His roots.
Yeah, and once in a while, we would go for coffee and muffins at Harvard Square. Yeah, but of course he was an American.
Not quite so.
And a very bright one at that, because he was the editor of Harvard Law Review, the first black person to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's quite an achievement. And I must say it might have been easier for the both of you to converse and get along, especially because of your roots.
No, for stories about Kenya, for sure he was interested.
Okay.
Yeah, but of course that time nobody knew.
Later on.
He didn't even look like, we thought he would be a professor.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So you were at Harvard or outside the country for approximately 2 years?
Yes.
When you decided to come back, and this might be interesting to our viewers, you were part of the Young Turks who were actually pushing for multi-partism. Talk to us about that.
No, actually what happened is after Harvard, I got a job in the American Civil Liberties Union in Washington, D.C. I was one of the staff attorneys there. And so we are there one morning, and then I read the Washington Post.
Yeah.
I see people patching on trees, a huge crowd being addressed by Jaramogi at Kamukunji.
Okay.
And after that, I couldn't sleep. So I went home and told my wife, well, we have to go back. See, we had just bought a car.
Yeah.
So now we had to sell it in a period of 3 weeks.
In a short period.
Yeah, so that I can raise the tickets.
Yes.
And I couldn't miss those moments in Kenya. So that's how we came back. And of course, we teamed up with the big Ford then.
We'll get to talk more about that because the parties that came up or that are there right now and the ideologies, many might argue that it's centered on the political figureheads who run these parties and not really the ideologies. So, and you've been a member of quite a number of parties. So that will be interesting just to get your take. Allow us to take a short break right now. You're watching Person of Interest. We'll be back with Meru County Governor Kiraitu Murungi. Do stay with us.